My name is Gene Marquis. I'm a freelance musician in the Cincinnati area, clarinet and saxophone player. Had a wide range of experiences in my life. For over 40 years, I played as an extra with the Cincinnati Symphony. Over that time, I played 15 different sizes of clarinets and saxophones. Also, I was first clarinet in 3 professional orchestras in the area: the Cincinnati Ballet Orchestra, Blue Ash Symphony, and Middletown Symphony. I held first clarinet positions in those 3 orchestras for over 30 years. I would like to draw your attention to some other videos that are already on YouTube. I did a video about Robert Marcellus and what he taught me about clarinet reeds. I also have 2 music videos. One is the Marriage of Figaro Overture, where I played all of the clarinet parts, A-flat piccolo to B-flat contrabass, and also the Balmer Adagio for strings, which I recorded 4 years ago and has 35 different clarinets from E-flat clarinet to B-flat contrabass. You can also access my web page, which is simply my name, eugenemarquis.com. One of the pages is a listing of the major works that I played with the Cincinnati Symphony, listed by the various instrument, E-flat clarinet down to basset horn and contrabass clarinet, bass saxophone. You can see all of those and the various people that I've worked with in my life, because I've never had a full-time job. I've just been a freelance musician and enjoyed a wide range of experiences. And again, you can review that in my webpage, and if you're interested in contacting me, that's how to do that, through my webpage. What I'm going to show today is going to be my warm-up that was developed while I was studying with Robert Marcellus. A lot of people use the close page 123, and back then I felt like I just wanted to do something else that would cover more things than what the close did. Why do we warm up? Warming up starts with simply that's what you are doing to your muscles. You don't see people showing up to a marathon and getting out of a cab and standing there until the race starts. People are standing there stretching, running in place, warming up their muscles. You see all kinds of sports activity where people are doing warm-up things before they get into their physical activity. Well, playing these instruments is a physical activity. You use your abdominal muscles, you're using facial muscles. And if you just pick up your instrument and just start playing loud all of a sudden, it's much easier to play incorrectly and in, may say, more damaging kinds of ways to your playing. So part of warming up is to warm up the muscles without damaging them. And also warming up is a period of time where you can review the fundamentals in your playing without any distraction. You're not reading any music, you're not listening to other people. All you're doing is listening to yourself and trying to refine how you do things, both your fingers, your tongue, your breathing, your embouchure. Warming up really gives you a chance to, again, review these fundamentals. If you're doing a warm-up correctly, then over a long period of time, it should do things to build your skills, to be able to play faster technique, tonguing faster, wider dynamic range for better expression. Your warm-up should have goals like that in it. I'd like to mention my influences, why I believe that warming up is so important. When I was in high school, my high school jazz band was invited to back up Doc Severinsen at the Ohio Music Education Association convention. And our band director said, if you guys want to know what a real musician is, show up a good hour more before we have to rehearse. So actually, 3 of us went down 2 hours before the rehearsal was supposed to start. So at like before 8 o'clock in the morning, we're walking down the hall and we hear this trumpet going nuts. Doc Severinsen warming up, doing scales and lip slurs and tonguing exercises, all this stuff. And we just sat out in the hall for a good hour or more just listening to all this stuff. And it hit me right then, like, well, this is part of what it takes to be a really good musician. You have to work on the fundamentals. And so Doc Severinsen was my first exposure to how effective good warm-ups can be. And then if you look at people like Pablo Casals, the cellist, he had a favorite warm-up he did every day. Pianists do their things with scales. Brass players do a regular pattern of warm-ups with lip slurs and stuff. So I was studying with Robert Marcellus and had already played with some symphonies and had heard a lot of orchestras. And if you go to a symphony concert early enough and you listen to the clarinet players warming up, a lot of them still use the close method, page 123, that lists all of the major and minor scales by going major, it's relative minor, and then you go up a fourth to the next key. You go around the circle of fifths that way. So you manage to cover all 24 major and minor scales that way. But when I hear people do that, they tend to go 1 and a 2 da da da, 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 da da. It's always kind of slow, which is good for warming up and maybe if you're emphasizing legato. But if that's the way you always practice it, you're never doing anything to build any speed. So I took that and other concerns into my lesson with Robert Marcellus, and I said, I think I want to develop a different warm-up than what everybody else uses, because I want mine to include more things than just scales played slow for smoothness. So my warm-up as developed with Robert Marcellus consists of 4 parts, which I will demonstrate for you. The first part is all 12 major arpeggios in triplets, up and down. Everything is done with a metronome. You will see the metronome speed for each key listed in the video as they go by. The second part will be what I do as a tonguing exercise. The third part will be all 12 major scales. And the fourth part is a fairly full-range chromatic scale. I always just took it up to high G and back down. So also in this 4-part warm-up, I use 4 different reeds, and later on, after I'm done showing you the warm-up, I'm going to show you how teachers always talk about you can learn from your students, and I learned something in this warm-up from one of the best clarinet students I've ever taught, Kazem Abdullah. So I will address that after I demonstrate the warm-up. I'm going to be using my 4 best clarinet reeds today. If any of you have seen my reed video, Robert Marcellus taught me about reeds. I carry 4 dozen clarinet reeds around in my case. And of course, on a demonstration like this, I'm going to use my best reeds. But when I'm done, I'm also going to explain a little bit more how I've integrated reed work into my warm-up too. So, starting with E major, I go up and down twice and end with a long tone that diminuendos from full sound to silence. That's something that I added with Robert Marcellus's suggestion, that I have changed that over time. Sometimes it's 4 beats, 8 beats, 12, as much as 16 beats going from full sound to silence. Right now I'm doing 8 beats. Whoops, if I mess up, I do it again. F major. F sharp. flat. A. B flat. B. C. D flat. E flat. Okay, what I just finished was the first part of my warm-up, which goes through all 12 keys of the arpeggios or chord patterns in triplets. The second part, I have changed reeds to a second reed. The second part will be a short demonstration of my tonguing exercise. When I first started working on this, I tried a lot of different patterns. There's a common brass pattern where you play a whole note, then 2 half notes, then 4 quarter notes, a measure of eighth notes, a measure of triplets, a measure of sixteenths. That's okay. And then there are some people that will do a whole measure of 16th notes. And after trying that and some other patterns, I settled on the warm-up pattern that my high school band director, Dan Baker, at Lyndon McKinley High School in Columbus, he used this pattern to warm up the whole band. 3 beats of 16th notes and a quarter note on the 4th beat. And the idea of the quarter note on the 4th beat is that if you are moving a muscle, the blood flow is restricted. If you stop moving that muscle, the blood flow can rise again and bring in nutrients and oxygen and everything. So the quarter note gives your tongue a split second of rest to, again, resume the blood flow and get everything working better. I found that that pattern let me build more speed and endurance than doing 4 beats of 16th notes. So what you do is find a slow starting speed for yourself. My starting speed is a quarter note 80. But if that's too fast for you, start something slower, maybe quarter note 60. And for most people, this should be slow enough. And what I do is play that pattern on each note of a scale. And after I play the first 4 notes of the scale, I turn the metronome speed up 1 notch on the Marcellus scale of metronome, not 1 beat each increase, but the Marcellus numbers. I turn the metronome up each increase until I can't go any faster. So I'm just going to give you a short version of that I start at 80, and I will do F, G, A, and B flat, take a breath, turn it up to 84, and finish the rest of the scale. Now I'm turning it up to 84. Now, I will continue doing that up to top line F and then go back down to low F, and each 4 notes I'm going to turn up the metronome until I'm up to my top speed. When I first started doing this with Robert Marcellus, over 50 years ago, without ever having practiced any tonguing exercise, and I had already a bachelor's and master's degree, my fastest tongue speed was maybe 16th notes at either 104 or 108. And then I started practicing this pattern, and within a month I was up to 132, and within 2 months I was up to 144. I could tongue 16th notes at 144, and I was able to do that for at least 40 years until age is starting to catch up with me. My fingers haven't slowed down much. My finger speed has slowed down maybe 10%, but my tongue has slowed down to where now my top speed is 116. But in the good old days, there were a few times when I actually hit 152, and I clearly remember one day when all the stars were aligned and I had a perfect read, I actually tongued 16th notes, single-tongued at 160. But for decades, I could do 144. I keep doing these warm-ups because in the words of Robert Cavelli, who was the first flute in the Cincinnati Symphony a long time ago, his name is on a lot of flute method books that are still used today. He told me when I was a kid, you spend the first 10 years of your life as a musician getting the first 90% of your skill together, then you spend the next 30 years getting the other 10%, then later in life you spend all your practicing trying to keep what you got and not lose it. And at 77 I'm kind of at the stage of trying to keep what I've got and not lose too much more. But this warm-up does help me do that. So what you do is just do this tonguing part every day as part 2 of your warm-up, that you do as much of it as you can. I used to do 3 2-octave scales every day. I do 2 2-octave scales, ending with my top speed again, which is around 116. Okay, on to part 3, which is all 12 major scales up and down in 16th notes with an 8-beat note at the end, diminuendoing from full sound to silence. E major, 132 to the 8th note. F major. F sharp. G. A flat. B flat. B. C. D flat. D. E flat. On to part 4, which is the chromatic scale in 16th notes. I start at a slower speed and go faster and faster. My starting speed will be 100 and I'm playing 16th notes. Then I go to 120. And lastly, 144. Messy. I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so you have heard me demonstrate, not necessarily perfectly every time, the 4 parts of my warm-up: arpeggios, tonguing, scales, and chromatic scale. Now, I want to tell you about how I learned from one of the best clarinet students I've ever taught. A youngster back then named Kazem Abdullah started studying with me in the summer after 6th grade. By the time he was in the 9th grade, he was first chair in the Cincinnati Youth Symphony. And to top it all off, he won the concerto competition as a 9th grader and played the entire Weber E-flat concerto, all 3 movements, from memory with the orchestra. And the recording of that, which I did for him, was part of how he got into the Interlochen Arts Academy, and that's where he finished high school. So I only taught him through the 9th grade, and then he moved on to much stronger territories. Well, anyway, when he was in the 8th grade, he asked me to show him my warm-up, and I showed him pretty much what I just demonstrated for you: chords, tonguing, scales, chromatic scale. With one difference, which I'll tell you about. He came back a week later with his metronome and said, I want to go over this with you and make sure I got it right. And I noticed right away, he kept changing speeds with every key. So I stopped him and I said, why are you doing that? And he said, because I can play the key of C much faster than the key of F sharp. So I'm going to let the key of C go faster and faster and not have F sharp holding it back. Up to that time, I had played all of the arpeggios in one speed. That speed was however slow, the hardest speed would pull all of the rest of them down. Same thing with the scales. The one speed for all the scales was whatever the hardest key determined for the rest of the other keys. So Kazem instead was changing speed with every key. So I'm going to go home and try that. Within a week of doing that, all my speeds started going up because the harder speeds, again, were holding back the easier speeds. And within a short time, within a month or two, all of the speeds of all of the keys, the harder ones and the easier ones, were going faster. So I have Kazem Abdullah to thank for that. If you Google him, you will find that he's a very successful conductor in Europe, conducts a lot of opera. He told me a few years ago he still plays the clarinet, and I wouldn't be surprised he still plays it very well. So again, you can learn from your students, and I certainly did, because what he showed me put a boost in my technique. I would estimate my finger technique increased my speed by at least 20 or 25% just from that one change. So thank you, Kazem. One of the things that I integrated into this warm-up is that I use 4 different reeds every day. I used my 4 best reeds today. Tomorrow I will use my B reeds, the 4 best reeds after these top 4 best. And when I play those 4 reeds on the chords, tonguing, scales, and chromatic scale, I will then play those 4 reeds and the worst reed of the A reeds. I will compare those 5 reeds and put them in order of best to worst. And then when I go to the next day to the C reeds, I'll play those 4 reeds and then compare them. So as I go through A through L reeds, 12 different reed holders, 48 reeds, as I go through them, I'm rotating my reeds methodically, and I'm always comparing them to each other so that as they get better or worse, they're either moving up or down in the order of best to worst in my reeds. So that helps maintain the order, and when I'm ready to get rid of the worst reeds, by the time they're down in the L box, they're pretty much worn out and ready to go. So one of the things that I integrated into this system is keeping my reeds rotated and a way of keeping them in order of best to worst that just is no extra work. It's just part of the pattern of how I do it. Some other stuff that I added were, of course, the long tones at the end. I do them 4, 8, 12, and 16 beats at different times. And because the scales and stuff are played in different tempos, I'm actually taking different amounts of time to shape. So I'm adding long tones to my warm-up, and I'm adding long tones with dynamic flexibility, which is helping keep the musical side of my ability going, being able to control the dynamics that I want to. So that long tone at the end is part of it. Now, here's my worn out old piece of paper that I keep on my desk at home, and that has a record of all of the different speeds that I'm able to play, including on one side of it, the top speeds that I've ever been able to play all of the keys. And what you heard me do today was actually 1/2 of my top speeds. In the 50 years or so that I've been doing this kind of a warm-up, I'd say at least 80–90% of the time, I play these scales and arpeggios and everything at the top speed I'm capable of doing. But then every once in a while, I'll notice little sloppy things sneaking in, or maybe my muscles are starting to tighten up and I'm getting no relaxation that I need. So once in a while, I will slow everything down and try to build relaxation and clean up the sloppy stuff that's snuck into it. And that's what I'm in the middle right now. So again, what you heard me do is all of these scales, all of these keys at 1/2 of my top speed. And as I'm ready to go faster, I just need to look at my chart. And now I'm going to go 1 metronome speed faster and then another metronome speed faster. Again, meaning the Marcellus numbers of increasing, like 80, 84, 88, 92. So to wrap up, in a long way, this is how I do my warm-up every day on clarinet. My saxophone warm-up is similar but shorter. If I do the clarinet one every day, my fingers can move just as fast on the saxophone, so I don't usually do as big a warm-up on the saxophone. I hope this has been of help for you. For those of you that are getting tired of playing close-A page 1 to 23 and you want something that gives you more directions, more purposes, more goals besides just slow finger legato. I'm not trying to insult the close-A, but I was looking for things that would give me more finger technique, more speed, more endurance, and what I showed you today has really done the job much more for me. I do it every day, even during the COVID shutdown. I managed to practice, I think I missed 4 days in 2020, and I think I missed 5 days in 2021. So practicing every day helps, and having a warm-up like this that keeps you centered and keeps a focus, a polish on your technique is definitely a very helpful thing to do.